But then I also broadcast the lectures of Alan Watts and the talks of Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And Clarissa Pinkola Estes is a Jungian therapist, and I don't know if you know who Alan Watts is.
No.
He's a Brit who brought Eastern religions to the beatniks in San Francisco in the 50s.
So he did a whole bunch of the translations of
Some
poems.
Yeah.
So I think I might be a little bit familiar with some of his work.
Yeah.
I did see Allen Ginsberg a couple of times in the 90s.
Well, this is Alan Watts, so.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
But I think that I think Ginsberg was sort of turned us on to some of Alan Watts' work.
Yeah.
That was, is that the same person who did a lot of translations?
I don't know if he did an awful lot of translations.
Okay.
He certainly did a lot of commentaries on Zen, and he helped establish my alma mater, California Institute of Integral Studies. But it was the California Institute of Asian Studies back in the 50s. So, but anyway, what?
Sounds good. So in this part of the survey, in the qualitative part of it, we ask about like the grading book setup and your interactions with the grade book. That's one of the questions.
Okay.
When you're talking about the features, how did you find the grade book? And when you do it online, you can type in your responses, but I wanted to give people the opportunity to expand a little bit if they had something that they wanted to show.
For Canvas, the Canvas gradebook, I haven't really gone in and done a lot with it because I kind of wait until the midterm to get everything put together correctly. One of the things I do like is that all the assignments are, let me just see here, that all the assignments are, when I put in an assignment, it's all listed there. So I've got I think it's 4 or 5 categories of assignments, the 60-word essay, the textbook exercises, the 5-paragraph essay, midterm, final, glossary, classroom participation, term paper. But in terms of the grade book, I haven't gone in and done a lot with that. I kind of wait until after we've got some momentum going, and I do see now how the grade book looks great to me. I went through with Tim Hensel how to get this set up so it would look appropriate and be easy for me to navigate. And let me just pull this up a little bit so I can scroll down.
So things are getting filled in, and and those are those things that I see that like different people have different grades on those. So you are going in and grading
Well, I have a teaching assistant.
Oh, you got a TA, okay.
And so and here's the thing in terms of my teaching philosophy. I teach my philosophy at 4 different levels. Black and white, which is the Aristotelian mode of is something true or false. And his 3 propositions really go to finding out whether something is true or false, whether something is or is not itself. But then I say, okay, tell me about the forest, yes or no. Can't do it. So then I go to a color dimension, which is a qualitative rather than a quantitative. And the qualitative has to do with depth, breadth, clarity, those sorts of criteria. But then the 3rd level is holographic, which is how does this material work with you in your daily life? And being that I teach a course in critical thinking, I presume that the students are already critical thinkers because they, for example, know what they like in music or in food or in clothing. So in that 3rd criteria, ask people to do a lot of writing, but short writing, 60-word essays to, like half a page or something, but I have them do it every class session.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the fourth dimension is how's this going to help you get a job?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about things that are not in the book. And in the holographic area, I show people YouTube videos and just get their reflections in terms of a critical awareness about what they liked, what they didn't like, what happens to strike them. So I want to get a sense of what their thinking process is. And then and I just lost my train of thought, but with the employment, there's nothing in the text in philosophy that talks about the development of emotional competence, which I think is actually quite critical for students, particularly at the freshman level, but it's also critical in terms of employment because there are emotional competence instruments that employers will, and assessment instruments that employers will have new employees go through. So I've brought in this idea about developing emotional competence, awareness of one's own emotional state. My master's degree is in psychology and spiritual counseling, and so is my undergrad. So I think that that's I'm in the syllabus, I'm calling the course critical thinking, but actually I'm speaking about this as critical awareness, because critical awareness is really a point of going beyond just thought, because people deal with their daily human life more than just with thinking. So it's developing this capacity for an emotional awareness, for an expanded awareness. So, but having said all of that, being that the A3 directive from the Executive Committee of California State University says very specifically the successful completion of a critical thinking course leaves the students capable of assessing inductive and deductive arguments and familiarity with the most common fallacies. So what I'm grading people on is what's in the book, which does that, because it's Moore Parker critical thinking and their California State University Chico. So all of the stuff that I'm grading is, well, the textbook homework is from the answers out of the textbook, but then I do also grade the written work because that gets beyond the yes and no, black and white idea, and then I do the 5-paragraph essays, which give people a chance to go expand a little bit more. And then I do require a final 5-page term paper that follows a standard academic format, whether it be NMLA or APA or Chicago Turabian, because I think it's important for students to get, particularly freshmen, to get familiar with this academic format, because that's just our language. How we communicate in academia. So, but I'm not real. I mean, these guys are just fresh out of high school, and they may not have a lot of experience in the academic formats. And I'd rather, meet them in their process. Rather than impose a strict protocol right out of the gate. And it comes to me to ask if I may get a copy of your recording of our interview today.
Sure.
That would be great.
Of course.
Because I've been told that my writing is pretty dense, but my conversational style and laying out my arguments is pretty good. So I should have been recording this. But anyway.
I'm recording it. I'm happy to.
No.
I'll email you.
That's great. So what questions do you have for me?
So overall, if you just take the 30,000 foot view of Canvas, and if you're thinking about your colleagues and the students at Sonoma State right now, and this is one of the questions that's on here that frames it. If you were going to recommend either Canvas or a up-to-date version, cloud-based version of Moodle, which is our other option, basically.
How would that be different than current Moodle?
Current Moodle, we kind of lock it down. So it's at a particular version. It's like 3.12 or 3.2, whereas 3.4 is the current version. So it would have more features. It would be cloud-based, so we wouldn't be as in danger of having our server crash or so that our data would be more secure. There were a couple little concerns. There might be some features that we could open up if somebody else was hosting it, that we might like limit your course resources to 2 gigs right now. And maybe if it's cloud-based, that could be 15 gigs or something. So there might be some configurations that would be a little bit more open for the faculty too.
Right.
So at this point, from what you've seen of Canvas, I know it's only early days, you've had it for 2 months and you've worked on it, thinking for your colleagues broadly and for your students, which one of the 2 platforms do you think that would be the best place for Sonoma State to live in for the next few years?
I think certainly there's going to be a learning curve coming into a new learning management system. Although I've been here, now this is my 3rd semester teaching at Sonoma State, and I hadn't used learning management systems before. And I have to say the faculty center here has been tremendously supportive in helping me become accustomed to Moodle initially. I found, but the short answer is I would recommend Canvas because it seems to be more intuitive. It seems to be, although there are a couple of curious twists where it's not quite as direct as Moodle. A couple of the things that I use to make the grading process go more quickly are rubrics for all of my assignments. And even though there may be, for example, in the textbook homework, either the answer is right or wrong. But I've told my students, because the purpose of this course is to learn how to argue, if they give me an argument why they answered the way that they did, and it has a reasonable presentation of why they answered the way they did, I'll give them partial credit. Not yes or no, but partial, which I think has some value. And I want to be supportive of that thought process of developing that. Because I don't know really any high school. Of course, I'm out of high school now 50 years, but it seems that most high school coursework is pretty much cut and dried. Either you get the answer right or you don't. And so I'm really interested in getting people to push back with a structure, and the structure that we're getting accustomed to, so that when it comes to the assessment of arguments in media, in literature, in politics, in classroom, that they have comfort and familiarity. Because this is kind of, it's not like they haven't done it, but they haven't kind of brought it into this context. They may talk among their friends, say, oh, I happen to like Bruno Mars because he has this great song that goes over and over in my head. But they don't bracket it in the way that one is expected to in graduate work, to say, okay, on one side there's this artist, on the other side there's that artist. So it gives the reader an opportunity to contextualize the offering. So, but I would say both Canvas and Moodle, to get back to that 3,000 foot level, both Canvas and Moodle do have their quirks. But coming back to this rubric, I use Turnitin because I can develop a rubric and successfully apply it. But it's a little twisty in Canvas to get it to do that when I'm actually setting up the pages. But in Moodle, it's not quite so indirect. Like there's 2 steps in Moodle and 4 in Canvas to put a rubric on a Turnitin assignment.
I gotcha. So it's a little bit more.
Yeah.
And are some of those features, so if somebody gets a grade wrong, then it comes up wrong, and then they're permitted to write in a response to, like...
No, what I have them do is I'm doing 5 questions per chapter, so they will answer according to what they think the answer is, and then give me a rationale as to why they made that answer.
Okay.
So if they get it wrong according to the textbook answer key, I'll go, okay, that's not right according to the textbook answer key. However, I'm not going to restrict us just to the textbook answer key if you can give me a good rationale for why that answer. And so if you give me a good argument, well, then I give you partial here.
And do they put that argument back through something that goes through the LMS, or do they send you like an email?
It's according. It's right along with the. I mean, because in the Turnitin system, it's you submit your answer, and then you can do a rationale.
Oh, okay.
Because it's just a text document.
Gotcha.
And that's how I'm not doing any kind of. Because I'm new to the learning management systems, I'm not doing test questions online, as it were. So, and I'm going to give the midterm next week, and it'll be a paper final. I mean, a paper midterm, and also a paper final.
Yeah. And one thing that is, and will they submit it electronically, or,
no,
or they'll be?
It'll be in class, and then I'll just, I'll just go through it, at home by hand.
One of the things that is nice in the speed grader, I mean, it sounds like you've got a plan, but it is interesting when people submit their documents. This doesn't necessarily address your APA formatting and things like that, because you would want to see that. If they submit a PDF, and it comes up and it's a file that's embedded in the speed grader if you click through the different assignments. But with people submitting things differently and formatting them differently, the speed grader will ingest the text and kind of format everything the same for you if you're looking through it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that could be useful. Some people describe it as useful, not.
Well, I'm going step by step into these things, and I want to make the more that I get familiar with either format, the more of the features I'm probably going to want to use. But I got enough to deal with with 2 sections and a teaching assistant. And I wouldn't mind a 3rd section, but it's and that's the other interesting thing is in the past, in the first semester, I only had 1 section. In the semester after that, I had 1 section of critical thinking and a section of ethics and value theory. But those were more advanced students, and we weren't using textbooks. We were using other texts that they would do a bit of writing with. So, but I figure, like for the freshmen, it's useful to have the structure of a text that's recognized, so that people can't come back and say, "Oh, well, you didn't do the critical thinking process properly." No, we use the textbook. This is from CSU.
Get your bases covered.
Yeah.
So in general, it sounds like you think that, like, for faculty that are doing moderate use, that have some LMS experience, but not a ton, they're not a power user, that Canvas meets their needs and is pretty approachable.
Well, right. And one of the things that I do particularly that I like about Canvas is the ability, and I don't know if we can let me go to the dashboard and go to the course. The thing I like about it is I can go to for example, I put up a media, Plato's Allegory of the Cave. I click on that, and bang, there it is. But with Moodle, I'll go to that and I'll click on it. Oops, no, that's the assignment. I'll go to the media, and it's showing up there, but there are some things that don't show up immediately in Moodle.
Click on them and they download, or they show up in another window.
Yeah. So let me just go back here and just see if I can come up with another one. So, for example, this media, the audio. Oh, that came up. That's Canvas, and then the media elements. Who are you? So I guess that came up okay with a
And different media might have different ways that it presents on the two platforms, and it does seem like sometimes Canvas is a little more likely to have it in line. And
so let me just check this one. Okay. Let me just see. So this is my media. So this is a second step. This site needs to be opened in a new browser window.
So there's some things that if it's, and these are things we don't usually pay attention to. I don't know why this one did it, because this is an HTTPS, but sometimes websites have like displaying insecure content in HTTP within a secure browser. It'll bark at that and say, that one, the link is in a, so that was a little.
Yeah, let's see what it does in Canvas, I mean in Moodle. So, no, that opened right up.
One of them went to her web page, and the other one goes right to the YouTube.
Now, one of the things, so that's the 30,000 foot.
That's the 30,000 foot, just to try to get that general sense of like what helps the most people the most. You know, like what you think, which tool, and
I guess, you know, being that I've used Moodle more than Canvas, I kind of know some of the steps, but now I'm kind of getting Canvas in place. The one thing that I don't like about Canvas, so I can go to an assignment, and here it is. So I'll go to some of these later ones. This is some stuff from last week. Again, it needs to be loaded in a new browser window because it's a Turnitin.
Oh, yeah.
And it just shows me the ones that have been turned in. With Moodle, I can go to, see, is that the Rupert Shelton? No, David Brooks. I can go to David Brooks. Where are we here? Here we are. And it will show me, this is one thing that always bothers me. It says show 10 entries. Well, I have to always go there and click all because I want to see everybody. But you can see, I can see immediately who's turned stuff in and who hasn't.
So the Turnitin interface, and I appreciate you showing me this because I've heard that there are differences, which was kind of surprising to me because it's an external tool. You'd think that they would make it look the same in multiple places, but there are differences in the way, the visibility of your ability to see who's turned stuff in and who hasn't turned stuff in in the Turnitin dashboard. Basically.
So this is one thing I like about Moodle that I have a question about with Turnitin, because how am I going to know who, I mean, I've got 15 assignments that are turned in, but I don't know, I mean, unless I go back to my class roster and say, okay, well, wait a minute, I didn't find this person's name, but I got to do that by hand.
If you look in the grade book, would these grades be populated for?
I think they would.
And so you could, I guess,
I could do it in the grade book.
And see who
right.
doesn't have a grade.
Right.
Maybe.
But I would rather do it here.
Yeah.
Because this is very useful for me to see that, oh, there's a whole group of folks that haven't turned stuff in.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that's very interesting to me, and I don't know quite why Turnitin does this, and maybe you can offer me some explanation about this, is I'll open up one Turnitin feedback, and this will be 16 of 16. So in order for me, I always go over here and click right back to the beginning. So 1 out of 16, and I don't know how Turnitin populates that.
Like just in terms of the order that they end up showing up to you.
Right. You know.
Whether it's the most recently submitted or it's in the order that things were submitted.
Because if I turn on direct Baron, he's going to show up not as the first one, but I think maybe the 16th.
So you click to give feedback on him.
And I got 16 of 16. Well, why was that done that way? I don't know why, but you know. So it's not a big deal, but it's just, you know. Now, one of the other questions I have is, and maybe again this is about Turnitin. I don't seem to have as many options in Canvas as I do with Turnitin, because it can be refresh submissions, notify non-submitters. There isn't that panel in Canvas. It's just this thing about, you know, well, okay, this is who's turned it in, you know, but I've got notify non-submitters, refresh submissions, and one of the things also that I'd like to be able to do is for all, and I don't know if you can help me with this, but for all people who haven't, and here's the other thing, I tell this is another thing about my teaching philosophy. I tell people I'm not going to be real anal and penalize people for late assignments, because I realize they got others, they're dealing with other classes. And if they can just get it in pretty succinctly, but with 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, part of their deal is they're learning how to be a little less flaky. You know, and a little bit more responsible. And some people are really good with that. Some people need a nudge.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I want to be able to do is with, for example, all non-submitters, after a certain date, be able to give everybody a 0. And then they go, oh my God, I've got a 0. And I said, no, well, wait, you know, I just got to let you know how you're doing in the course. And you haven't turned this stuff in. So I had to give you a 0, but you know, let me know that you're going to turn it in, and I'll accept it and take the 0 off. So there's some flexibility, and I'm willing to. I know some faculty are pretty hardcore about late assignments that they don't want to go back over.
Yeah,
but I'm not. I want to be flexible. I want to be supportive.
From what I know, it sounds like getting the 0, and then there's, I think in Canvas lingo, they actually call them fudge points, that you can then manually just say, okay, you got 6 points, and enter in the fudge points.
Well, right. So, but here's the thing with Canvas. So for example, if I'm going to go, I'm clicking on the grade pen for a student who hasn't submitted a file, creates a grading template, which will allow you to give the student a grade mark feedback for the assignment. So I'll go, okay. So now we'll come up with a grade mark template. And because they haven't turned anything in, I'm going to click on that and give that student turn it in only it doesn't accept a 1 or a 0. Well, I guess in this case it did, but and then so I'll go back and then it'll load it, so it's 0. Okay, and that's gonna go in, and I haven't actually cleaned up my gradebook for Moodle, but And in the end, for the other, I don't usually do this stuff until the midterm, because things, even up until this week, some people still didn't have their textbook. And they can't do the textbook homework without the textbook.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm a little less anal about setting up a grade book. But this is going to show up and it's going to pull their grade down.
Yeah.
If they go back and check the grade, you know.
Yeah.
So
what I'm nice in some ways to have sort of like an auto nudging system, and then you're kind of looking for simplicity of ways to kind of get that.
So now I'm actually going to trash this template.
Okay.
Because I want Andrew to have an opportunity to turn it in. So now we go back to the entries, and now Andrew's available to upload again.
Okay, he's available. I was worried he was going to disappear altogether.
No. But I don't have that option so much. I don't have nearly so many options. Well, I don't know. Let's upload, download, delete. You know, it's not quite as clear as in. But in order for me to do this, it's a lot of fussing around for me in either format to give people zeros and then have them come back to me and say, oh my God, you know, I'll get it done. And I say, okay, then if you're, you know, it's kind of my way to communicate with people. And this is, you know, I've got to, because you haven't responded, I have no choice but to give you a zero. And then, oh, okay, I'll respond, and then I'll open the window again. And I've been asking people in class, but this is another way to be a little bit more concrete in that request. Because then if they don't respond after they got the zero, then there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Other than maybe talk to the advisor, which I do.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. It's usually at midterm, I kind of assess kind of where everybody is. Because particularly with freshmen, they're disoriented enough, you know. And I'm trying to be a real supporter with flexibility, but not with a lot of flexibility up to a point. You know, so. Some people that's not their style, you know, because it does involve a lot of fussing on my part.
We're monkeying around with things to try to make it.
Within each assignment, I've got to go and change all these non-submitters to zeros. And then when they come back to me and say, oh, okay, we'll go ahead and submit, then I've got to go back in each assignment and turn back on. I mean, or reopen the submission.
So there is basically a teaching need there that is not just special to you. I see it in all the around campus, all of the courses, that ways that you manage students, knowing about their grades, the flexibility to be able to set up a system that feels fair, informative, but also holds people accountable.
You bet.
And the two LMS systems have slightly different tools available.
Right.
It sounds like that particular teaching need is not really ideally addressed in either platform. It looks to me that like there's room for improvement there.
Right.
It's a problem across campus. We want to handle.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm just saying that like the classes that I've been in, I've seen the same thing. The classes that I'm doing research in, I see 30% of students, just like what your class looks like there, when those people haven't submitted their turned it in on time. You know, you're not going to fail 30% of your class.
Well, it was very interesting to me because the department chair that hired me said that there were 2 freshman classes that had a 50% failure rate.
Maybe you do. I don't know.
One of them was English 101, and the other one was critical thinking, philosophy 101. And it's because people just are not prepared out of high school to get into this different environment where suddenly it's like they're adults, and the accountability is shifted significantly, and it's very disorienting. They're away from home. They don't know quite how to manage their time because it was controlled in high school. So there's not very much preparation.
And there is a lot of, these particular issues you're thinking about. You could spend 3 or 4 hours a day thinking about them if you wanted to. The assignments that I see in the Science 220 class, you could spend 40 hours a week on that class and achieve, you have 4 or 5 classes. It is difficult to manage all of what people are trying to, between their life and their academic responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
It's not insignificant. The older I get, I can see there are a lot of details there. One way or another, how you get over that hurdle to make the most people successful as we can. That's something that if the LMS can somehow be a part of helping more, cut the freshman, failure rate in English 101.
Well, I'm very thankful that in my first class, my failure rate, my first section was 10%. And last semester, my failure rate in 101 was 0, because I, was in touch with the advisors, and I was in touch with the students, and I gave them a nudge. I said, unless you come back to me to take that 0 off, I have to leave it. But I have I've demonstrated over the last 6 or 7 weeks or 8 weeks into the semester that I have flexibility, but there's a point where I can't be flexible anymore.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, really? It's kind of like they're waking up and going, all right. And then they step up.
Yeah. But as much as somehow if we can figure out ways to help professors manage that in the LMS.
But some professors are very hyper accountable.
Yeah.
So if you don't get that assignment in by the due date, too bad.
That's it.
Goodbye.
But
that's,
does that help? Sometimes it might help people grow. I'm more of on your philosophy that, I really want to see people doing the most interesting work they can.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily, if they then turn around in the rest of the semester, they're, taking more and more responsibility.
Even if it's still, people are learning how to run their life. And even if they're still a little flaky, if they get everything in, I'm not going to penalize them about it, but I do tell people, an employer wouldn't do this necessarily. But I appreciate how this is a real new experience, and but some people have the orientation, well, it's for their own good if you be real strict. Well, I'm on the other side of that, because I appreciate in my own experience how people have been lenient with me to a point. And it's an interesting experience about people, the freshmen going through, and they don't know what they don't know. And it's kind of like suddenly there's a 0, and wait, what do I do? And I say, well, take advantage of the tools that I've been offering you all semester, and talk to me, and let's see what we can do. And if you are confused about the material, let's work with it. But up to that point, up to that 0 point, some people don't talk. Some people won't come to class. I'm not going to be real strict either with attendance. Again, because people are experiencing this hyper accountability with other instructors, and it's a lot of stress for people because they're not used to finding they're not used to not finding the accommodation, and it was so interesting. very few people had understood when I asked people about this, about the time management, about that you need to be studying 2 to 3 hours for every unit per week. So my class is a 4-unit class. That means you got to study 8 to 12 hours per week on this material. People didn't know that. They didn't know what that meant. So I'm there to kind of go, okay, you know, I'm happy to open this up, but you know, there's a point beyond which I can't work. But I'm looking at our time, and I've got an 11 o'clock appointment, so we're at 10:45 here.
Let's see. So let's do this. We'll give you. I'm going to go through just very quickly the other questions.
Yeah.
When you do the online, you know, the first section is the more quantitative.
Right.
Picking things. There are a couple text boxes, but you can look at these other questions that are in section 2. You have to click through to the end in order to submit your information.
Sure.
But if you have additional things that you don't get to express during this interview, if you either want to come back and talk some more, that's fine with me.
Okay.
If you want to type in those responses and submit it with these same questions are available there too.
Okay.
So let's see, just try like a sentence or two about these topics, like the ease of use of Canvas, which I think you've been talking about a little bit, but if you...
Once I know what Canvas wants, it took Tim and I a little while to find out how to get the Turnitin rubric to be applied to the assignments. And it was like a 4-step process. That was not necessarily intuitive, and we sort of stumbled onto it. Whereas Moodle is, you go and create a new assignment, and you've got all this choices right there, bang.
So the Turnitin is a pretty centrally important external tool that you use, and
if there was another,
that is that implementation in Moodle currently is a little bit better, and that made it a little bit more confusing to get up and running.
Yeah, but now I know how to do it in Canvas. It's just not you know,
it's
learning my way through the maze, you know.
Yeah, and so that obviously, if we go forward with Canvas, we're going to have to identify those things to say, you know, we're going to try to save the rest.
And maybe Canvas can be opened up a little bit. Yeah, configured differently.
Your migration experience, you're teaching the same course. You've taught this course before. Are you simultaneously teaching one section in Canvas and one in Moodle?
Yep.
And did you have any difficulties? Did you build?
We were delighted that from last semester I was able to migrate into both Moodle and Canvas.
You felt your course came over okay?
Yeah. It didn't migrate any of the Turnitin assignments, but again, that's okay.
And that's the same in Moodle and Canvas, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to set those up fresh each time. So in the end, like, how long would you say it took you to kind of like take your course and get it up to kind of in a similar spot where your Moodle, if you had to compare those two, it was relatively comparable? Or
I would say maybe a little bit longer in Canvas because I didn't know where things were. But in some things I really do like about Turnitin, about Canvas is, and let me just see here. Moodle doesn't have this thing where all the assignments are in one place, except the gradebook.
Yeah.
But I like this, so that I can go right down and see, okay.
And on the syllabus tab, it organizes those too. And if you make changes in the calendar, the dates change on the syllabus tab.
Now, one of the things too I want to show you. So, for example, it's available until May 18th, but it's due March 2nd. Okay. Now, in Canvas, in Moodle, I can't have a due date. Because if I put the due date for example, let's see, this is the David Brooks. When I put the due date February 23rd, if I put the due date here for February 23rd, if they try to submit after that, they're locked out.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. With Canvas, I get due the 23rd, but then I get a notification. Oh, they turned it in late.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine. They turned it in. That's great. But I have to go back, and unless I put this final date of acceptance, I don't like. It was a real pain for me to have to go back and unlock these due dates.
Yeah, and if they get set wrong for some reason, then you get a ration of students.
Yeah.
So accepted.
Right. So that's a real problem with Moodle. Is that the due date locks after the due date, people are locked out. There's no option to accept late work.
And so your overall experience has been pretty positive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I do like it. I have to say also something that has kind of moved me to be a bit more favorable about Canvas is that Canvas has offered me and anyone who wants one a standalone account that's independent of the university. So if I want to teach a class in the community or something, they give me a free standalone account. Moodle doesn't do that. So being the fact I'm familiar here, then I can take my learning here and take it out into my standalone account.
Yeah. And do you teach at other universities too?
No.
No.
Not yet. But if I were to do that, it would be great. But I mean, even to take it out into the community. So if I want to teach a class that's non-academic, I would have the option to use this platform that I already know.
Yeah.
But that to me is another useful support feature.
I agree, and with Moodle, you'd have to set up your own server, and there are professors that do that, that run their own Moodle servers and things like that.
But I don't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah, we want to be able to engage. We have a whole center for community engagement. So being able to build things that are open, that sounds good. So you got an 11 o'clock appointment.
Yep. So what else you got here?
The other issues are just, and you can just pick if one of these things sounds like something you want to weigh in on for a couple of minutes. There's basically the strengths and challenges, which you've discussed different things that you found, whether or not you were able to recreate workflows you used in Moodle. And it sounds like you have been able to. Any accessibility issues like that you've seen with Canvas that we should be aware of, that if you have students with disabilities?
I don't see any problem there. I don't really see any difference. Again, the only thing that I really would like different in Moodle than Canvas than Moodle is to be able to see in each assignment panel who hasn't turned in work. So.
And what type of, any thoughts, suggestions on support or training that if we do move to, what kind of support do you think your faculty, obviously your time with Tim was very useful.
Oh yeah.
With 500 faculty, it'd be difficult to have, you'll have to probably have something like a first level of support where there'll be workshops that'll be offered a couple times a week and weeks leading up. And then if people need more support, they can come obviously to the faculty center. But I just wondered if you had any ideas of knowing what you see now of getting up and running, what type of support would be most helpful towards if we do transition.
Well, I think primary support from the faculty center, but secondary support from the 16 of us who have been volunteers. I would be willing to work with people in my department or in the English department, for example, in at least sharing what I know and what I do and what steps I take to do what I need to do. as part of this transition process. You know,
Mhm.
I feel it's a really important point to, certainly on my CV, to say, oh, I've got experience in 2 learning management system platforms now.
Mhm.
I don't know Blackboard and I don't know some of the other ones, but you know, Moodle and Canvas, well, okay, that makes me more attractive to other institutions, I think.
Mhm.
But in terms of training 500 faculty, I think the 16 of us can be a second level of support that can be of assistance to the faculty center, because if it's a changeover, people are going to probably be pretty grumbly because they can't just migrate their Moodle into, there's going to be some fussing.
And sometimes it is discipline specific about what tools they use a lot, and different how they set up quizzes, things like that. How much online only education they do. Sometimes the online only people. Have you taught any online courses yet?
No.
Or mostly face to face.
Just face to face.
That you know, there's different needs in different places. Those different usage. Well, I appreciate very much you coming and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. Let me just log out here. Yeah, I need to roll over to the
So the next